Such tranquillity was not to be found in the marble courtyard, however, as Freya helped Eurysil to clear up his globular devastation. This now included rounding up a flock of seagulls let in by one of the congealing portals, as Gio set about helping others fix the pagoda. If his composure had not already been shattered by his earlier antics, Eurysil had now obliterated any sign of dignity as he chased the seagulls around the octagonal courtyard, waving his hands frantically and begging them not to mess on the pristine white marble floor. Having amassed much of Eurysil's mucus into a large floating ball, Freya took a moment to look across the courtyard. Although she too was anxious that Eurysil's new friends did not leave any gifts behind, she smiled indulgently as Eurysil flapped around, trying to relate to the seagulls. Then, deciding that the seagulls were Eurysil's problem and his alone, Freya went to check on the centrepiece of the magnificent courtyard, the 8-pointed compass. She was not surprised to find that the compass, set in deep blue marble, with a golden outline and a central obelisk of granite, sat untouched. There was something unwavering about the compass. It had always looked the same and had not once needed cleaning. This never-waning symbol of the 4 gates gave its people a sense of security. As long as its 4 cardinal points faced West Gate, East Gate, North Gate, and South Gate, the people knew that they were united and went about their lives with the same unflagging conviction. Freya jumped as a loud crash echoed around the courtyard. Spinning her head around, she did not need to search long for the cause. She saw Eurysil and his seagulls bouncing off the mighty portcullis of West Gate, a vast Gothic castle of epic proportions. Its tall spires attacked the sky whilst its battlements of war-torn stone and its doors, hewn from the largest redwoods, all resonated with a message that it had survived many onslaughts over the centuries and was as impenetrable now as it was then. Eurysil's seagulls didn't stand a chance. Within its ivy-strewn walls resided those that valued the old ways above everything else. Despite having the door slammed in his face, the fact that he was adorned in traditional robes meant that Eurysil was from West Gate. Although his colour choice of bright green, with swirling gold trim, was perhaps not typical, that was Eurysil, an oddly eccentric classic. He, like the rest of his people, was hugely knowledgeable in history and the ancient arts. Of course, no one else from Westgate suffered from Eurysil's sneezing condition, and they frowned upon his outbursts, feeling it unbecoming to their ways. On this matter at least, they shared common ground with Requiem. Dropping the portcullis suggested that they were waiting until Eurysil regained the appropriate level of reverence to be let back in. Freya looked back towards her home, wondering if Eastgate was going to suffer another Eurysil blundering. The people of Eastgate were the complete opposite of those of Westgate, and Eurysil would likely suffer more than bruised pride if he were to crash into the shimmering wall of water that was the East Gate. Behind the water sat a temple of glass and steel. The centrepiece of this homage to the future was a pyramid that would make even the great pyramids of Egypt look insignificant. 4 thin but very tall obelisks surrounded the pyramid, acting as the modern-day equivalent of castle spires. Although they did not look as unforgiving as the spires and towers of Westgate, they had an ominous presence all the same. Although it had never been said, everyone was sure that these 4 obelisks of glass were not in the slightest bit fragile and, unlike the passive impenetrability of the spires of Westgate, would take an active role in dissuading intruders if need be. Freya hoped fervently that today was not the day everyone was proved right. The people of Eastgate were the most forward-thinking and embraced technology and progress with every waking breath. Freya, like Eurysil, was dressed typically of her gate brethren. Her black clothing was of a high-tech fabric. Her trousers looked like leather, but were lighter and more breathable. The front and back of her trousers were made of 2 separate pieces of material. Buckles ran up the sides, holding the front and back together and acting like a belt that wrapped around her body. This was adjustable at the touch of a button located in the waist. allowing the clothing to become looser or more fitted. Freya's vest was made of what appeared to be silk that never creased, with strips cut out of the length of the arms and sides and filled with an intricate fine black metal resembling lace. The vest also had a large split, this time all the way down her back, with more automated buckles allowing for different fits depending on her activity or mood. Where Urasil and Freya did not resemble their gate brethren was in the way they interacted. East and West gates were poles apart in their beliefs, and their people did not mix. However, Freya was always there to look out for Urasil, and he for Freya in his own way. The two were inseparable, although neither would admit it. Cheers from Northgate alerted people in the marble courtyard to the fact that their red pagoda was standing proud once more. The small, idyllic Japanese village beyond the pagoda gate was unperturbed by all the commotion. Built in traditional style with new materials and techniques, it was as steadfast as it was breathtaking. With the dust and globules gone, the automatic shutters on the building windows flew open to allow in the restored glory of the day. Like every gate, Northgate had a central building. In keeping with its Japanese style, this was a large pagoda surrounded by smaller houses, all set in a beautiful and tranquil garden. The people of Northgate were balanced. They looked to the future and learned from the past. They valued respect and honour most of all, and were known for doing the right thing. Due to this nature of balance, the people of Northgate would often settle arguments between the feuding East and West gates. Spending his days with Requiem meant that Gio could only have been from Northgate. None of the other gate dwellers would have had the perseverance, or indeed the open-mindedness, to enjoy the company of a man that many referred to as chaos incarnate. Like all of those from Northgate, Gio was dressed in traditional Japanese garb. Due to his gargantuan proportions, he opted for what he liked to call a loose-fit, casual style. Even though his cream sleeveless wraparound top couldn't cover his chest, and his matching trousers finished just below the knee, Gio was simply pleased it didn't tear instantly the moment he moved. Where others put faith in ancient runes or science, Gio put it in his mighty red belt, relying on it to keep his top closed, his trousers up, and generally holding everything in. Well, just about. Secretly, he liked showing off his barrel chest and tree trunk-sized legs to the world. Gio could always be counted upon in a crisis for either muscle or words, and being in crisis was something he was more accustomed to than most as he battled constantly to keep Requiem on the straight and narrow. Saving the world was becoming an increasingly regular event for Gio. There was one area of the courtyard that Urasil didn't have to shepherd his seagulls away from, the South Gate. This towering black riveted iron gate exuded terror. No one went near it, and no one spoke of it. Even the seagulls veered violently from its path. Unlike the people of Northgate, who travelled freely between North, East and West gates, the people of Southgate rarely emerged. Staying inside were all that society deemed evil. Each of the gates had their own types of creatures as well as humans. Westgate residents included unicorns, dragons, and creatures of ancient myth. Eastgate boasted the latest in engineered wonders, whilst Northgate was the kingdom of the cat. Southgate held little of human form and was home to demons and terrors of old. While it was true to say that, for the most part, the Southgate didn't open, it wasn't because it couldn't. It was also fair to say that although humans could be found behind its black gate, it wasn't that there were none. It had opened in recent memory, and a human had walked through it, Requiem, the only human to have crossed all four gates and frequented the ivory tower. Seeing that Urasil was in as much control as he'd ever be, Freya buffed the granite point at the centre of the compass and walked away to collect the remaining globules. She had not been that close to the compass in a long time, let alone ever polishing its central point, and this brought her to thinking about the ivory tower and her people. The compass's steadfast granite point thrust up into the bright blue sky, pointing the way towards the ivory tower high up in the picturesque clouds. It was a castle like the Gothic Westgate, but more akin to a fairy tale, with smooth lines and round turrets. It was always perfectly white and a shimmering beacon in any light. The council held court in the ivory tower and was charged with maintaining the balance of the four gates. The council comprised 4 leaders, 1 from each gate. Each represented their gate's interests, ensuring their people's well-being, as well as governing the 4 gates and its satellites as a single entity, a nation in its own right that was recognised and respected by the governments of the world. Indeed, the council managed these relations with the Hafuna governments carefully, ensuring that the peace they enjoyed prevailed. Not many living outside of the 4 gates and its satellite network of hidden citadels knew anything about this, however. Their country was simply called the 4 Gates, and was not on any map, nor could it be seen by any satellite or pair of eyes that should not. In return, the people of the 4 Gates were equally respectful of the wider world and its laws, striving never to cause a commotion or interfere with the daily life of its people. 4 alleyways, each identified by the 4 cardinal points of the compass, connected the 4 gates to its satellite citadels around the world. These alleyways also took people to their own sanctuaries, but no 2 ways of activating these alleyways were the same. The people of the 4 gates were Akatsuki, witches and wizards of old, who had discarded these redundant titles in a bid to distance themselves from the thoughts and deeds associated with such words and start anew. They were in a new era, a new dawn, and, with it, they assumed a fitting new name, Akatsuki, a Japanese word for dawn. It was a name of hope, but born from the brink of despair on the smouldering battleground of Japan where the treaty with the Hafuna was struck. On this day, a thick cloud had enveloped the sky, a result of the earth-shattering bomb that had decided the war. One of the founders of this treaty was Kinku, whose name, somewhat fittingly, meant balance. Kinku was a powerful wizard and became the first leader of the North Gate. He held his hand to the polluted sky and drew it down. A beautiful dawn rolled across the sky, heralding a new age and a new name, not only for the people of magical descent, but for the non-magical majority too. They were called the Hafuna, the Japanese word for resourceful. Although both human in origin, the Akatsuki would push their society forwards with magic, whilst the Hafuna would continue to rely on their resourcefulness. Freya's poignant thoughts were interrupted as Urasil tried to grab the seagull at the back of the flock and missed his footing, instead diving into a globule seeping down the ominous black wall connecting the 4 gates. Freya looked at her friend, whose head was literally somewhere else as his body stuck out of the globule, hanging dejectedly against the mighty black wall. Deciding that he was better off half in their world, half in wherever his head was stuck, Freya surveyed the rest of the wall for dripping mucus. After all, she didn't want anyone emerging from an alleyway to suffer the same fate as Urasil.